Hello?
Jorge,
Hello, Jean Paul, how are you?
quite well. How are you?
Everything is good. I thought the interview was like half an hour ago. Then I realized, oh no, wait, it's still. I just, sometimes I just put schedules in my head and I think they are real and they're not.
I do that every day, my friend.
Anyway, and before we talk about the new record, in August you guys played Portugal finally for the first time. How was that show for you guys? I mean, we loved it anyway, but how was for you guys to be here for the
It was
first time?
beautiful, amazing, amazing. Very much enjoyed it. We had not been to Portugal before, and so for us that was a new experience. We had the opportunity to see some of the countryside as well. We drove in from Spain, and then we drove from Porto to Lisbon. That drive was amazing, and it's just an incredible experience. Great food, and of course the shows were incredible. So I mean, what
Yeah.
more is there?
Yeah, that's the best you can hope when you play a live show, I guess. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
and when it comes to the new record, Sunrise on Slaughter Beach, when did you guys start working on the record?
We started writing pretty much right away. As soon as the pandemic happened, we started writing. Um, Over the course of 2 years, we wrote a tremendous amount of material, and it took quite some time to sort of narrow that material down to what the new record was going to be. So much of it we did not use, um, and it was kind of a process of just getting together and playing and recording all these ideas. Um, I think the thing that made this album different was that we did not have the opportunity to play the songs live on stage. So at first, I thought when we were recording, I thought that was going to make for a record that was. I thought it wouldn't be as good, you
Yeah.
know. Well, we can't do this live, so how are we going to pull this off? And I think in reality, it was a good thing, because had we had the opportunity to record these songs after we had played them live, I don't think they would have sounded the way that they did. It very much was an experiment going into the studio, so it was a very different kind of experience for us.
Yeah, and that being said, you plan to repeat the experience like that? Not experiment the songs live, just go in the studio, record them, and then after play them live.
Yeah, I think so. I think we gained a lot of confidence by doing that. You know, before that, I had an idea of what I was going to play for each song. I would go so far as to make notes, sometimes even write out exactly what I was going to play for a chorus or a bridge. Very specific ideas as to how I was going to record that song. This time we didn't do that, and it was actually a lot of fun, and it came out better than I thought it would. Um, so I think for that reason we have more confidence, and we enjoyed the process of going into the studio and not knowing exactly what the song was going to end up like.
Yeah. And, when you're writing, you talked about, there was a lot of ideas. Do you plan to use those ideas in the future, or is just something that if you think it wasn't good enough anyway, just going to leave it and that's it?
I think maybe a little bit of both. You know, on the one hand, sometimes recording an idea is just an exercise in itself. You have to record that idea in order to get to the next idea. So sometimes a riff is not really the final riff. That's like the baby of the riff, and the real riff is going to come later. You have to develop that first idea, and then the real idea will come after that. So I think there is a little bit of that, but I will say, I have gone through some of our old demos, and just picked up little bits of ideas that maybe we didn't use previously. So it's all fair game.
Yeah.
There are no rules in the way that we make an album.
And this songwriting, obviously during the pandemic, were you guys able to get together, or how was that process?
Yes, we were able to get together. We live in close proximity of one another, so we were fortunate in that way. Many bands live all across the country, so we had the opportunity to get together and play, and we did. Not only did we write and record songs, but we also did shows too.
Yeah.
We played gigs from the same place that we were jamming, the same place that we were making ideas. We would just bring cameras in, and then we would do a gig. So that was a good thing too. That also kept us focused, and we learned a lot. We didn't know anything about streaming a show prior to that. So I think between the writing and streaming of the shows, we stayed as focused as we could.
Yeah. And, obviously the pandemic was, had these trials and tribulations for a lot of people. For you guys as a band, that helped, experiment with new things, as you were saying, like streaming is one of the things. The writing as well ended up, changing a bit in the sense that you guys didn't have the time to experiment the songs live. So the pandemic can add a positive effect on Clutch in that sense of growing.
Yeah, I mean it's positive. We're not dead, so that's positive. I think it's hard to say. I think we're going to look back in 2 or 3 years, and we're going to have a very different perspective of what we're feeling at the moment. I know that there were things that I was able to accomplish during the pandemic that I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd been on the road. I started taking lessons with a teacher, a drum teacher called Dom Famularo, and this studying was just purely technique, and it took a lot of hours, and I sort of deconstructed the way I play drums, kind of started from scratch in a way, and I was able to do that because I had the time. I think if we had been touring, I wouldn't have been able to take the opportunity to do that. Now that we're back on the road, and these things that I learned during the pandemic have helped my live show immensely. I feel much more comfortable at the drums. It's really just about playing in the most relaxed manner, and I want to do that because I want to play drums for a very long time.
Yeah,
and so I want to be able to stay relaxed when I play, and so the pandemic allowed me to study these techniques, and I feel much better about my playing these days.
Yeah, they say you cannot teach an old dog new tricks, but in your case, I'm not calling you old by any means.
I certainly am. I am an old dog, and yeah,
it's possible.
A real thing.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's completely possible. I got my drum kit back here. I got my books up there. I work on this thing all the time. I study all the time, and I'm continuing to learn. And that I think that's invaluable. That you have to maintain that musical curiosity. You've got to. For me, anyway, I have to keep myself engaged. I do not want to become one of these guys who just gets up there on stage and plays the same shit every night, same fill, same thing. That is not interesting to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah. It's just like fans, you have those people that seem to only listen to one band or one artist. And, I could never do that in any way. I would think could be so restrictive and so boring that if you don't at least try to listen to newer bands and new artists, I mean, do you even like music if you just listen to one artist?
Right. I agree. I think you have to keep your ears open, and especially as a musician, I have found it very valuable to study things that are outside of rock and roll. I like to study jazz and African stuff and Latin stuff, New Orleans music. I love that. And it's not because I'm going to sit down one day and I'm going to play a Latin beat and then Tim's going to play a riff on top of it. But learning these things widens your perspective of time. I think you better understand what happens in between these quarter notes when you can look at a Latin rhythm, for example, or a New Orleans beat. You can take these ideas and then you can apply them in your own way.
Yeah.
But it keeps it exciting, and it's not just about trying to play the thing that you did last night over and over again.
Yeah. But for an artist, when you play for a long time, there is some sort of resistance sometimes to learn new stuff. In your case, obviously that doesn't happen or didn't happen. But for you, what was the most, when you were learning, having the lessons, what was the most difficult thing to let go in a way of your playing? If there was a thing that you had to let go somehow.
Yeah, for me, it was tension and maintaining a very relaxed posture and stance. Playing rock and roll the way we do at the volume that we play, at the intensity that we play. There are just natural habits that I built up over the years, and maybe tightening up a little bit too much or putting a bend in my wrist where it shouldn't be. So my teacher, Dom, was really great. He could just look at me in the computer. We'd sit here like this, and I would have my pad, and I would just make strokes. And he could look at my hands right away, and he could tell me, you need to move your finger a little bit, or you need to move your pinky, or flatten out your wrist. All of these things, and it was tiny, tiny details. But I had the opportunity to really look at those details and work on those ideas, and the results have been incredible.
Yeah. And, when it comes to Cluth, you guys decided to present a new record with a live stream as well. How was that show, the live at Amberjack's?
It was great. It was great. My mom was there. It was the first show that she has seen since the pandemic. That was great. She very much missed coming to rock and roll events. So it was great to have her there. And it was kind of a hometown vibe. We played in Baltimore. In an outdoor kind of a industrial place, and it was great fun. And the fact that we were able to stream that show live, I think was pretty awesome. We had not done something like that before, so it was great.
Yeah, and when it comes to writing, when you guys get together, obviously it's important to bounce ideas off each other to see what works, what doesn't work. But normally, how does a song start with you guys? It's always the same way, or that changes considering the song, or
always different, always completely different. Sometimes Tim will just have a riff idea, and he'll play it a few times, and we just immediately just grab onto that. I am sort of the recording engineer for the band, so I have my computer set up behind my drums. And as soon as I hear Tim playing, we get into a groove, I turn around and hit record, boom, and we record that idea right away. Sometimes Neil will bring in something that sounds kind of like a completed song. He'll come in and say, I don't know, I got this thing, I think it's kind of dumb, but check it out. And it's awesome. Of course it's awesome, Sometimes I might sing an idea to the guys, hey, try to play this. Or I play a tiny little bit of bass guitar and a little bit of mandolin. So I might kind of show them this idea that I came up with, and they can make it sound much better than I ever could.
Yeah.
But there's no one way. And I think that's what makes it fun. Some bands, I think, depend on one band member to bring all the songs to the table. And then the results, I think, sometimes can be kind of one-dimensional. Fortunately, there are 4 guys who have 4 different musical opinions, and so it makes the process. It makes it fun, but it also makes it different from time to time. Yeah. Every song comes together in a different way, and some take longer than others do.
Yeah, and being like a band where 4 people have opinions of their own, obviously, did you fight much, or everything is very much polite when it comes to discussing ideas and trying to think that my idea is a bit better than yours?
There is not a lot of fighting going on, but I can also tell you that there's not a lot of verbal communication going on either. We can put together an idea with just sort of grunting at one another, like, okay, yeah, do it again, and then record, and then, Okay, and then sometimes I don't even say anything. I just count it off. Here we go. So we've been together for so long now that sometimes we don't even need to speak to one another.
Yeah.
We sort of share a brain in a way.
It's when you have an idea in your head, let's say you have a dream and there's a melody or something that pops up during that dream. Are you able the following day or when you get up to translate that idea, to the drums or to the bass, or can you manage to do that?
No, I wish I had. Wish I was better at that. If I have an idea, I need to record it right away, because I'll tell myself, "Oh, I think I know what that idea is. I'll remember that," and then I get at the drums and I say, "Now, what was I talking about now?" So for me, it's very important to have recording equipment around. I have to be able to record that beat. Sometimes I'll have note paper and I'll just write out some quick drum notes, like this idea might be cool. Sometimes I'll make drum notes like that, and then I look at them the next day and I say, "What were you talking about?" What is this?
And on this record, you guys use theremin, and you got some backing vocals as well and vibraphones. Was because of the pandemic, in a way, that you guys were able to go a bit further in the experimentation to write?
I think the reason that there were those kind of instruments on there was because of a lot of these songs were not fully formed when we went into the studio, and so there was a lot of experimentation going on. We just decided on the spot, hey, let's try theremin. We've never done that before. We had a theremin there in the studio, and so we just figured, hey, let's give it a shot. I think the best part about recording the record that way was the ability to experiment in the way that we did. Again, I think if we had played some of these songs live, we wouldn't have taken those chances in the studio.
Yeah.
So I think this record, it'll take some time to really to get a perspective on it, but my feeling is that this record is going to occupy a different place in the Clutch catalog than the previous albums.
Yeah, and you guys worked again with Tom Dalgetty. I was to work with Tom.
Great. Super fun guy to hang out with. First of all, he has got a lot of good jokes. We like that. We don't want to take ourselves too seriously, and he was really good about that. He was also very helpful because at the point that we were ready to start pre-production with him, we had been working on these songs for a year and a half or 2 years, and we had no perspective. We as we said before, we didn't play these songs out live, so we didn't really know what the audience perception was going to be. He was really great in being able to come in and say, I like that idea, or I like this idea. And sometimes the ideas that he picked were ones that I thought were not quite complete, maybe, or ones that kind of made me scratch my head and say, I don't really know what that is. But he would say, oh, just play that one, try that again. And so some of the songs were ones that I kind of didn't think would end up being on the album. And as it turns out, they're some of my favorite songs.
Yeah. And, obviously it's different when you have like a producer that has a different ear, because when you're in a band, you probably, as you were saying, lose the perspective of, the songs, and for you it's probably great, but maybe with a different ear, you can change things a bit. With Tom, he wasn't forceful in his ideas. He was always more into the, just try it and see if it works better that.
Very, very much, yeah, and that was the sort of the philosophy when we went into record. Let's just try it and see if that would work. We were making this album that we didn't really know what it was, more so than any record that we've done before that. I would say probably the best example of that is the last song, Jackhammer Our Names. When we went into the studio, it was really just a chord progression. And within an afternoon, this thing that was sort of a chord progression sketch developed into this epic song, and it really blew me away. I had not had that experience in the studio, at least for many years anyway. So it was very inspiring.
Yeah. And when you listen to a record, do you feel the temptation to change things again?
Of course, always. Yes, yes, yes. And that holds true for all the records. I listen back to some of the stuff that I recorded, and I think, God, why did you do that?
Yeah, but when you play those songs live, when you feel, there's a slight change that you can do to the songs without compromising, obviously, the essence of it, the way that people know the song. Did you guys do that when it comes to the live setting? If you think, maybe this whatever thing on drums can, just give a different vibe to the song. Do you guys like to do that?
Very much, yeah. Speaking for myself, I very much enjoy it. I never play the song the same way twice, mostly because I can't do it anyway. Even if I tried, I couldn't do it. So rather than fight it, I say, okay, let's just play totally different tonight. And of course, the form of the song does not change, but there are little details that I might change. I like to experiment with how much I swing the song, and just manipulating the swing just a little bit sometimes can make a huge difference in the way that I play the song that night. Anyway, I think probably the listener out there, maybe they hear a little something, but I kind of doubt it. More than anything, I think people are listening to the vocal, and so I try to do different things every night. It keeps it fun for me. Sometimes I see drummers in the audience watching me, and so I'll intentionally do something different from the record just to try to get a reaction from them.
I saw Rush once live, and probably one of the most amazing bands ever. And it's amazing how the fans, when Neil was playing, they knew like the way his hands move and everything. And that was like, for me, it was like, there was two experiences: watching the band live and watching the fans trying to emulate what was being played live. And
yeah,
it's just one of those things like, Neil couldn't not do any differently because someone there would know, hey,
whoa. Yeah, I had a couple of experiences going to see Rush, and I very much remember the same kind of thing. I remember watching the band, but also turning around and watching the drummers.
Yeah.
The first time I saw Rush was in 1988 on the Presto tour. And I remember very specifically seeing drummers with drumsticks that glowed in the dark. And there were many of them. There were dozens of these guys out there. And I remember turning around in this arena, and you saw lighters and you saw drumsticks, glow in the dark drumsticks.
I think it's crazy, and it's great when there's such a dedicated fan base, to doing that. Just they live the band, and I know for a fact there was like people would do the whole tours with the band. They would follow. They would do like the whole European thing. They would do the whole freaking shows. It was unbelievable. I talked to a couple of them, and they said like, "Oh, I've been to 40 shows already on this tour or something." And I was like, "What?" I'm happy if I see one show of a tour of a band that I like, let alone like 40 in a row or something. No, that's crazy, and that's dedication. Like with Clutch, do you ever saw any fans that would, there in the US would follow you guys as well?
Oh yeah, and that's been going on for many years, since the '90s. I think at some point in the late '90s, Tim, our guitarist Tim, he used to joke that we were the Grateful Dead of hardcore, which I'm okay with that. Yeah. I don't mind that. That's cool.
And when it comes to Clutch now that everything is pretty much open. Let's hope there's like no more restrictions when it comes to pandemics and stuff like that, that we can adapt better to those situations. What are the plans now for Clutch? European tours, live shows. What are the plans now?
Yeah. Well, we're very excited about going back to Europe. I would love it if we were going back to Portugal, but we were just there, so we'll wait. Maybe next year. But we'll do Europe, and we'll take some time off in the early part of the year. At this point, we will have been on tour for well over half the year, so we'll be ready to take a break, and then we'll start back up again in the springtime. And I see us staying quite busy next year as well, and then probably carving out some time to start thinking about writing a new record. And hopefully that process will start again. We'll write and we'll record and we'll play, and hopefully it won't be like it was before.
You guys are always like collecting ideas for new songs. It's part of the band's DNA to just take notes of ideas for future songs.
Of course. Neil is especially good at that. He's always recording stuff. He has his computer on the road with him, and he's always writing riffs. We're always talking about what might be a cool idea to try, and we haven't really engaged in the writing process part just yet. We've been so busy with touring, but I suspect that will start shortly after the new year. We'll take some time off, and then everybody will get bored, and we'll say, "Hey, let's do something, man."
Last question: do you think rock is dead?
I hope not. Man, if it is, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
No.
I was just asking that. It's just obviously.
No, I know, and I don't believe that. Rock is not dead. Everybody has a different idea of rock, of what rock is to them. For me, rock and roll is people up on stage playing real instruments, not playing to backing tracks, not concerned about pyro or production, but just, can you get up on stage and can you play your ass off?
Yeah.
And there is still some of that going on. There are still bands who get up there and really just try to do just that. When you see it, it's very refreshing. We had the opportunity to tour with Motorhead a couple times.
Yeah.
And for me, that was by far the most inspiring tours I've ever done. To watch those guys get on stage every night and consistently just burn the house down.
Loud.
Loud,
man. So loud.
loud. And they meant it. They meant every single note. And I that's still around. People still do that. Maybe it's more difficult to find, but trying anyway.
I was surprised. I remember, when Post Malone played here, Portugal, like at Rock in Rio or something, it was just himself on stage. And I give kudos for a promoter paying $1 million to an artist that brings just a pen drive, and just goes on stage by himself singing the songs. And, that's a great way of making money. It's like best thing ever. If you want to get rich quickly, it's the best. Sure. It's the best thing ever. But as you were saying, a band, for me, it's like being on stage and playing real instruments. I'm not so against backing tracks if it's just used slightly, not as like a Britney Spears show where she just lip syncs and, doesn't sing at all. I saw her once, and for me I was like, I didn't get anything out of it, because you could see that she wasn't singing live. And for me, that's, okay, she has a lot of dancing, but, ditch the fucking dance, let the dancers do the dancing, and you perform, sing for us, because, that's what you're known for. And I don't have, nothing against backing tracks if they are used, just to enhance a bit the live show. Because, let's say a band like Def Leppard, they have a lot of stuff going on. I'm not sure if they use backtracks or no. I'm sure they do, but I don't have a problem with it because it works, and you can see that Joe still sings live. He tries, So,
Absolutely. And those guys are up there playing. They really are playing their asses off, and it's amazing. What those guys are in their 60s at this point.
Yeah.
So hey, I find it very inspiring.
Yeah. All right, Jean-Paul, thank you very much for your time. We want to get into more debates about that because we don't want Blabbermouth to just pick up a freaking headline and say, oh, it's against backing tracks or something like that. No, it's just...
we don't want that, man. They'll get all pissed off.
Yeah. It's only rock and roll, It's I love, you talked about Motorhead, and for me, one of the best experience was to watch Motorhead live. Again, there's no point. There was no pyro, no anything. It's just rock and roll, loud. My ears were ringing the day after still, even with earplugs. And, you cannot beat that experience if you really like a rock show. And, that's all the best we can hope for.
I just saw, my wife and I went and saw Judas Priest just a couple days ago. And it was incredible. Really, really amazing. We had third row seats, and watching Rob Halford do his thing.
Yeah.
Oh, incredible, man. I loved every second of it.
He's still amazing, after all these years. There was a phase there that his voice wasn't that great, but I think he rested, and, whatever he did worked, because now live, he really, sometimes the screams are really screams, but it still works,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's still there. They are a great band. Anyway, Jean-Paul, thank you very much for your time. All the best.
Certainly.
For Clutch. Hope to see you guys soon in Portugal. We'll be more than happy to welcome you guys again. All right?
Can't wait to come back. Yes,
all right. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and all the best. All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Night. Thank you. Bye-bye.